Hello, I'm Molly Fillmore, and I'm here to present Juliana Hall's Cameos and the Female Visual Artist as Muse, From Inspiration to Creation and Beyond. Francis Poulenc's Le Travail du Peintre showcases 7 male visual artists, one for each song of the set. Juliana Hall's Cameos, composed in 2018, draws its inspiration from this staple of the literature, showcasing 6 American female visual artists as a parallel work to Poulenc's established masterwork. In this lecture recital, not only will these fascinating and diverse female visual artists be discussed, but also the step-by-step process by which the art song cycle was created, from idea through publication by E.C. Schirmer and commercial recording in 2021. The lecture will culminate in a complete performance of the work by the duo who premiered it, which includes the author of the song's texts. In addition to making this new and interesting work better known, I hope that through this lecture recital, members of the NATS community and student performers will be inspired to take their own inspirations and forge ahead in creating their own artistic opportunities. So this presentation will be done in 4 parts. The first part, I'll talk about the creation process, from the original inspiration, the creation of the poems, to the co-creation with the composer. Second, the finished product, organizing the premiere, the publication of the sheet music, seeking a recording label, funding, and creating a recording. The third section, I'll talk about the content of the cycle and introduce the 6 artists who serve as the muses. And finally, you'll receive a performance of the song cycle. Some time ago, I was watching an episode of a TV show called Antiques Roadshow. And on that particular episode, they were featuring some artwork by an artist named Belle Hoffman from Ohio. And the appraiser noted that Belle Hoffman had formed the Women's Art Guild of Cleveland. And the appraiser talked about how the reason that many of these such women's art clubs were formed was because at the time, this would have been the early 20th century, it was frowned upon and in some cases not even allowed for women to display their artwork in public galleries. So I sat there thinking about it, and as I did, in wondering how many wonderful works of art were never seen or celebrated simply because they were created by a woman. And I thought about Francis Poulenc's Le Travail du Peintre, which is an art song cycle with text by Paul Eluard, and it consists of 7 art songs, each one inspired by a different male painter. So, for example, there's a song called Pablo Picasso, there's a song called Marc Chagall. And so I thought, well, what if, as a way to sort of promote and celebrate some female artists, since they obviously have had challenges in our history of being promoted and having their art seen, what if there could be an art song cycle parallel to the Poulenc cycle that would instead feature female visual artists? And thus the idea for Cameos was born. And I decided to pursue the idea and see what I could do to help create such a song cycle. So the first thing I needed to do was decide which artists would be showcased in the song cycle. And I didn't want to go to the most well-known artists like Georgia O'Keeffe or Grandma Moses, or artists who might be more considered household names in our country. Instead, I wanted to look for amazing artists who are not as well known, but really deserve to be. So what I did was I went to the library. I went to the University of North Texas library, and also to a wonderful used bookstore that we have on the square in downtown Denton. And between those two places, I was able to look through many, many artist catalog books, and eventually narrowed it down to 6 female visual artists. It just so happens that they're all American. That was not intended, but it just happened that way. And I'm very happy to tell you who they are. I found Sarah Albritton, Alice Dalton Brown, Corita Kent, Agnes Pelton, Nelly Mayro, and Kay Walking Stick. And again, these are just fabulous artists that I had never known before. Now, I will say that they all are recognized in the art community. They all have, recognized more widely to a different level. But all of them have had works displayed in galleries and such. So they're not completely unknown artists. They have received during their lifetimes recognition for their work. But again, they're not sort of at the level of having what you might consider a household name or a commonly known artist, which I personally believe they deserve to be because their works are just fabulous. So once I had that narrowed down, the next step was to find the text for the songs. Now I had found the muses. And originally I thought, okay, I have to find a writer. But what happened next was sort of, very unexpected, I would say, and certainly not anything I had intended originally. I was starting to go about the process of finding a poet, finding a writer. But as I would sit and look through the catalogs for all of these different artists, honestly, the words just came to me, the poems, the ideas. I knew that the poetry, like the Poulenc cycle, I wanted it to be more impressionistic rather than trying to tell a story, a narrative, some kind of biographical sketch. That wasn't how I wanted them to be. If you're familiar with the French cycle, you'll know that it is very impressionistic, and that's how I wanted these to be, and that's how it came to me, the poems, and so I started writing down the words that came, and I will tell you that it took me some time to gather the courage and the nerve to share those poems, because I've written poems for my own personal self in the past, but never for a public display. And so it took months, literally, for me to gain the courage to actually share the poems and that I had written inspired by these artists, and especially to share them with a composer whom I wanted to ask to write the music. So I say this just to tell you that this wasn't easy, and it wasn't done with complete confidence every step of the way. I had to argue with myself to convince myself that it was okay to share these poems and they might be all right enough. So yeah, there are struggles, even with things that work out in the end. So I had the artists, I had my poems, which I was hoping would work. And the next step was to find a composer. Well, a couple of years beforehand, I had sung some songs by Juliana Hall. I had sung some of her songs from the cycle Syllables of Velvet, Sentences of Plush, which are texts written by Emily Dickinson. They're actually excerpts of letters that she wrote. And Juliana Hall, out of those texts, created a wonderful song cycle. And Elvia Puccinelli, who would eventually be my partner for the premiere of Cameos, she and I had performed some of these Juliana Hall songs as part of a fundraiser in Amherst for the Emily Dickinson House and Museum. So that's how I first got to know Juliana Hall's music, and I really loved those songs and thought they weren't just beautiful, but they were just really interesting, and the text painting was very unique and special and definitely had its own language. So I thought, well, I'm going to approach her and see if she'd be willing to consider my idea. So I put together a folder with samples of the art from the visual artists, and then put my poems in and my proposal. The reason why I wanted to do the cycle, why I felt it was important, why I thought these artists deserved any kind of spotlight we could give to them, that their work is important and should be known. And then again, I gave sort of some samples of artwork and also my poems. And I finally got the nerve to send it to her, send that little packet to Juliana Hall. I had emailed her first, and she had known about our performance in Amherst, Massachusetts that had happened previously. So we had had a little bit of connection. I wrote to her. I said, here it is. And she said, I'd love to, see it. So I sent it to her through the mail. And much to my delight, she enjoyed the poems, she loved the art, and she thought it was a great project. So that is how we went from beginning to creation of this song cycle. It started sitting on the couch watching TV, which I know doesn't sound particularly, like the kind of activity, I wasn't sitting on a mountaintop looking over a gorgeous landscape. I was watching television. But that's how it started. And, I just kept an open mind all the way through. I think that helped allow the poems to come into my head. And I just really the whole time believed that this is important, that these artists are wonderful, and I wanted to do anything I could to help promote their work. And I'm a singer. That's what I do. That's what I know how to do. And so I thought, okay, I can sing about them. And that's how this was created and why. The premiere for Cameos occurred in October of 2018 as part of UNT's Collab Fest, which is an international conference organized by Dr. Puccinelli for collaborative piano, and she was my partner in the premiere for this. And so we were very, very grateful to invite and have Juliana Hall as the featured composer for the festival, and so she was able to be present at the premiere, which occurred at the University of North Texas. And so then the next step was the publication of the sheet music. Well, originally, Juliana Hall published it herself through her own publishing company, but then since she recently had signed on with E.C. Schirmer, they agreed to publish the song cycle, which was of course very exciting, and so now we have the published song cycle through E.C. Schirmer. And you'll note, which one is this? This is the soprano version and the mezzo-soprano version. So why is that? Well, originally, this is the original version, the soprano version, which Juliana Hall wrote. But although I'm labeled as a soprano, I'm kind of neither fish nor fowl. And when I got the soprano score, it sat a little bit too high for my particular voice, although I loved how it sounded in that range. And so I asked Juliana if it would be possible to do a mezzo version, which sits for me, just given the nature of my instrument, mezzo keys for art songs tend to do better. And so now we have also a mezzo-soprano version. So what we did was at the premiere, I sang making sure I'm holding the right one. Yes, I sang the mezzo version, but then a couple months later, we had a separate premiere for the soprano version, and I invited various students from UNT to each sing one song on that premiere. So that was a very exciting event, and I'm really glad I was able to offer the opportunity to 6 different singers, 6 different sopranos, to sing a piece in the premiere of the soprano version. So then the next thing was that I really wanted to make a professional recording of it, and I was aware of an amazing sound engineer and pianist, actually, by the name of Sergei Kvitko, who owns Blue Griffin Recording. And so I reached out to him and told him about the idea. I applied for a grant and was awarded that grant. And with all of those pieces in place, Elvia Puccinelli and I did the recording back in, I believe it was May 2019. Now, in order to have a full-length CD, we not only recorded Cameos, but we also recorded 3 additional song cycles of Juliana Hall. And this is the resulting product, Bold Beauty, and it contains the Cameos cycle as well as 3 additional cycles. And so that's how we went from the finished song cycle to published work and CD recording. Now with the process behind us, let's talk about the artists. Sarah Albritton was born in 1936 in north central Louisiana, where she lived all her life. She wrote, quote, "I was born in hell. I grew up in hell. Let me describe hell to you. If you go back and look at the situation, I was born, nobody loved me, I was hungry, I was naked, and I was cold. And I lived in hell until I could take care of my own self." She lived in various, quote, quarters, which is a word that harkens back to the Civil War era and was used frequently in the time of Sarah's upbringing to describe former slave quarters. She married in 1954 and had 3 children. She maintained that she had received many gifts from God, and it was her duty to use these gifts or else they would be lost. Alongside her art, she felt the gifts she had been given were healing and ministry and cooking, and she eventually had her own restaurant. In 1987, she opened Sarah's Kitchen, a popular restaurant showcasing her Southern-style food. In talking about her cooking technique, she referred to it as dump method. She would dump flour into a bowl and determine the amount of her remaining ingredients based on whatever came out in the original dump. Her canned goods were equally popular, including her Mayhaw jelly. She eventually closed down the restaurant, not because of lack of success, but because of the time it took in her advancing age. She was also known for her house art, including her Christmas light display with over 200,000 lights, most of which she hung herself, and her painting, which is described as being in the folk art genre, self-taught. One sees the imprint of her childhood days. One often sees the contrasts of the quarters in which she lived and the homes owned by white people on the other side of the stream. She often portrays herself in her paintings as a little girl wearing a white blouse and a blue pleated skirt. She says that when she was 9, a friend of hers got a blue pleated skirt, but her mother couldn't afford one. So in her painting, she shows herself wearing the outfit she so much always wanted. There is usually a stream in her art because she said that a stream followed her wherever she went, and she spent a lot of time praying by the stream. Her art has been featured in galleries all across the country. In writing this poem, I thought about the situation she grew up in and how she was so strong, and she made so much out of her life in so many different ways. She healed, she preached, she painted, she cooked, she raised children, she learned how to weld, she fished, so many different kinds of things. So the poem that came out about Sarah was this: born in hell, grew up in hell, quarters, yet also a stream, a girl in a pleated blue skirt and white blouse, praying by the stream and discovering talents worthy of many lifetimes in one body of light. Hang the welcome sign and string the Christmas lights. Paint, Sarah. Cook, can, heal, preach. Mayhaw, jelly, and dump method. Hell is no match for you. Kay Walking Stick. Kay Walking Stick was born in 1935 in Syracuse, New York, and she is a member of the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma. She is mostly known for her landscape paintings, which often are based on patterns found in Native American pottery and artifacts. She has said, quote, "My wish has been to express our shared Native and non-Native identity. I want all people to hold on to their cultures, but I also want to encourage a mutual recognition of a shared being." She largely worked at home while her two children were young, and she eventually taught for years at Cornell University, where she retired as a full professor in 2005. She currently lives in Pennsylvania now with her husband. What struck me about her painting is the strength of the strokes and the vibrancy of the colors and the life force that comes out of her work. And those are the things that inspired the poem. But the first line of the poem references a specific event about which she did a painting. October 5th, 1877 is that date that Chief Joseph, exhausted, surrendered in Montana after seeing so many of his people killed. He said, and it's the time he wrote the famous line, quote, "Hear me, my chiefs, my heart is sick and sad. From where the sun now stands, I will fight no more forever." That's the moment that inspired the painting, which inspires the opening of the poem. Even the faceless announce a force, palpable. The strokes, the lines, the contours, strength of a woman, of a people, of a force, enters the space, ready to breathe, ready to act, ready to dance. Own, engage, be respected. Nelly Mayro. Nelly Mayro said, quote, "I draw what is in my mind. I draw things you haven't seen born into this world." Self-taught and recognized today as one of the most important American folk artists, Nelly Mayro was born on the 4th of July in 1905 in a farming community in Georgia. She had to leave school in 4th grade in order to help her family pick cotton on their rented family farm. Her father also worked as a blacksmith and a basket weaver. Her mother was a seamstress and a quilter. Nelly lived her entire life in areas outside of Atlanta. She decorated her house and called it her fun house, decorating it with drawings and dolls and random things. She said, quote, "When other people have things they don't want, they throw them away, but not me. I would take nothing and make something out of it. Ever since I was a child, I've been that way. Sometimes I go down to Food Time grocery store when they have unloaded stuff. I gets egg cartons and bread bags. They lose stuff and I gets it. The reason I'm telling you, I picked up everything you see on my house. Everything. Just picked it up, other than what people give me. That carton hanging on the tree, I drew on it with lipstick. It melted. Used to be those colors were bright, but I likes that things keep on changing. In her art, Rowe often combines figures and makes unusual creatures, for example, a dog human or a bird woman butterfly. And when she was asked about this, she calls those things, quote, something that ain't been born yet, unquote. She worked in a variety of mediums. In her two-dimensional works, she used primarily magic markers, crayons, and pencils. But she also made dolls and chewing gum sculptures. She said, quote, seems like God gives everyone talent, and I guess making little stuffs is my talent. And people come from near and far to see my little junks. Folks like to see them, and I like to see folks, unquote. The poem inspired by Nelly Mayro, who I have to say is probably my personal favorite, is this. Magic markers and crayons and pencils with boundless views into the future. Chewing gum sculpture, pig on expressway. That which isn't born yet, given cameo appearances through your hands. Alice Dalton Brown. Alice Dalton Brown was born in 1931 in Pennsylvania. She began her studies in France, eventually earning a degree at Oberlin. She is married and has 3 grown sons and lives now in upstate New York. Her painting style has been described both as realist and American precisionist, and though her paintings do resemble photographs, they really are paintings. I found a quote of hers that reminded me of the craft of classical singing training, with its necessary balance of technical sophistication and creative spontaneity. She said, quote, "The visual tension in between controlled linear constructive elements and textured disordered active areas has always intrigued me. unquote. When I saw her paintings, I saw places I wanted to be, places I would imagine as being perfectly wonderful, so inviting. But her work also got me thinking about reality and how if you go there through her paintings, she can transport you into this wonderful place, then what are the boundaries? And how do we agree upon what our reality is, where we are in the moment, and the environments therein? So the poem inspired by Alice Dalton Brown is all of my homes are here in your gifts. My porch, my window, my chandelier, my curtains. Perfect welcome. Temperature, inviting. Air, crisply clean. As real as any image of the agreed upon today. And as worthy. Agnes Pelton. Born in Stuttgart, Germany in 1881 to American parents, Agnes was 9 when her father died, and shortly afterwards she and her mother moved to Brooklyn, where her mother opened a school of music which she had there for 30 years. Agnes's health was poor as a child, so she was educated at home, where she also received a musical training. She did not wish to go to art school, and so she instead moved out to Long Island, where she lived in a windmill and earned her living by painting portraits of summer vacationers. In 1932, at the age of 51, she was to visit a town near Palm Springs, California, and was so captivated by the environment that she stayed there the rest of her life. In 1938, she founded a group known as the Transcendental Painting Group. Her work is widely varied. As I got to know her work, I was struck by the difference between her landscape art and her abstract works. She referred to her abstract paintings as her, quote, essential work. And as I looked back and forth at these different groups of paintings, the landscapes and the abstract work, I thought about how we would see the landscape paintings as being the realistic work. But who knows? Maybe she knows something and knows and sees something we do not. Who knows? Is there a monopoly on what defines reality? So for the poem, I thought about how she has one foot in one kind of approach and style, and the other foot in the highly abstract style. Although, if it's really that abstract, it really wouldn't be a foot, would it? So here is the poem. One foot placed in the descriptive now, enriching beauty with beauty and presenting the eye with a taste that enhances that which we perceive as our view. The other foot, no longer a foot, but a sense, a knowing, placed in the realm of beyond. And you allow us to behold that which is elsewhere and alive. Or is it that realm of beyond which is the now? And we simply do not have your key. Corita Kent. Corita Kent was born Frances Elizabeth Kent in 1918 in Fort Dodge, Iowa. She would become an educator, a nun, and an advocate for social justice, alongside being a wonderful artist. At the age of 18, she became Sister Corita after joining a religious order. She would eventually lead the art department at Immaculate Heart College in Los Angeles, California, and graduate from the University of Southern California with a master's degree in art. Her work evolved from more conventional religious paintings to work that includes advertising, images and slogans, song lyrics, biblical verses, and literature. She worked almost exclusively with silkscreen, and she wanted to work with printing because she wanted to find something that was accessible to most people, to the masses. When she began working in printing in the 1950s, she received a lot of acclaim. She was on the cover of Newsweek in 1967, and throughout the 1960s, her work became increasingly political, urging her viewers to consider poverty, racism, and social justice. Citing exhaustion, she eventually left the religious order and moved to Boston shortly after she was diagnosed with cancer, but she continued working up until her death in 1986. In recent years, she has gained a lot of recognition for her role in the pop art movement. She said, quote, "Creativity belongs to the artist in each of us. To create means to relate. The root meaning of the word art is to fit together, and we all do this every day." In Los Angeles today, there is the Corita Art Center, corita.org, which preserves her art, teaching, and passion for social justice. The beginning of this poem and the beginning of the music is inspired by her circus alphabet art note cards, in which she does wonderful things with letters of the alphabet on different cards. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K. Come sing again, Corita. Come teach us how to unify sentiments. Take the profound and the ridiculous and mix it magic into a compact jolt of vivid, confident confusion. Sustained by calm fearlessness to exclaim the diverse and equal. Truths we seldom have your eye to see. Come sing again, Corita. Teach, sing.